Hezbollah's leader says he wants foreign influences out of Lebanese politics. Just what do these Western governments want in the country? What impact do they have on Lebanese politics? And what do the Lebanese themselves think? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Jane Dutton. Lebanese politician Saad al-Hariri will meet with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for talks on Tuesday. On the agenda, the UN tribunal to try suspects in the 2005 assassination of his father, former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik al-Hariri. But the tribunal has been criticized by others in Lebanese politics. Some say it's just another example of foreign influence in the country. Both France and the United States, permanent members on the UN Security Council, support the tribunal, and both countries have a history of influence in Lebanon. The United States has a history there that dates back decades. In 1982, the US helped broker an agreement under which the Palestinian Liberation Organization would move its headquarters out of Beirut. But the United States had supported the 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, and in October 1983, a suicide bomber attacked a US Marine barracks in Beirut, killing more than 200 troops. US forces left Lebanon less than a year later, but their interest remains. Washington accuses Syria of continuing to have influence over their neighbor. On a visit to the country, American Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said the US supports a Lebanon free from foreign influence. And in a meeting with Parliamentary Majority Leader Saad Hariri last week, United States President George Bush emphasized his desire to see foreign countries remove themselves from Lebanon's internal politics.
I am deeply concerned about foreign interference in your elections. It is the message has been sent to nations such as Syria that they should not interfere in the election of the president. The international community has spoken, and we expect Syria to honor that demand.
On the other hand, France is one Western power with close links to the country. The post-colonial relationship between France and Lebanon has always been a close one. When Sarkozy took over the presidency from Jacques Chirac in May, Saad Hariri was one of the first to take his personal congratulations to Paris. His father, Rafik al-Hariri, was a close friend of Jacques Chirac's, and their friendship lay behind the Franco-Lebanese connection until al-Hariri was killed in a huge explosion in 2005. France's connection to Lebanon remains strong, but critics claimed it lay with just one side of Lebanon's many factions. It's a claim that France's Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner strongly denied in an interview with Al Jazeera last week. He reiterated plans to hold talks for all parties to resolve Lebanon's current turmoil.
We ask all the communities, 14 parties, to come to France and to have negotiation and an excellent atmosphere, including Hezbollah. So don't say so. We are not in favor of one group against the other. We are in favor of legality.
Joining us to discuss this issue from Beirut, Robert Fisk, Middle East correspondent for the British newspaper The Independent, George Hajar, an academic and political analyst, and also in Beirut, Carlos Ede, president of the Lebanese National Bloc. Welcome, gentlemen. Mr. Fisk, how influential are these foreign powers in the upcoming elections?
Look, every battle, political and military, that's fought in Lebanon is in fact being fought by foreign powers. The war here last summer, and indeed the crisis, the political crisis here now, is actually about America versus Iran. But inside, of course, Lebanon now, you have the Hezbollah representing Iran and to some extent Syria. You have the government, which is now called American-backed in the news agency wires, kiss of death for any government in the Middle East. It's called American-backed, so you have the United States with the government, as indeed the United States was with the government when the army here fought the rebels of Fatah al-Islam in the Nahr al-Bared refugee camp for many months this year. So we've got major powers involved here. We've also got, of course, the UN force, 22 different nations in the south, led by 4 NATO generals. The European powers, the Western powers, the Eastern powers are deeply embedded in the soil of Lebanon. And I don't see there's any way of thinking they're going to go.
Is this influence causing what we are now seeing, a real shift between the Christian Maronites within the country?
Look, the Christian Maronites have been in conflict with each other since the time of the Crusades, and it happened when General Aoun fought the Phalangist Lebanese forces militia at the end of the Civil War. We're seeing it again between the ex-Phalangist leader and Aoun now. And of course we have Aoun, oddly enough, a man who used to loathe the Syrians and the Hezbollah, now effectively on the side of the Hezbollah politically against the government. You know, it is a little bit of a game of drafts in this country, and you find the most amazing thing, especially for a foreigner who comes here, is to see how one moment an extraordinarily pro-Syrian politician, like, for example, Walid Jumblat, is suddenly a very pro-American politician visiting George Bush at the White House.
Mr. Edo, what benefits do you think these Western governments have brought to Christian politicians?
Well, it depends on the politician. First, I would like to, you mentioned the United States and France, and like Mr. Fisk just said, you have to include a lot of other countries that have a direct influence in this. You know, Lebanon is a small country. It is a pluralistic country. During colonial times, the contradictions were used not only by the Ottoman Empire to try to divide and rule, but also for European colonial powers to extend their influence here. Now, obviously, if you include all the major interests that all these countries have in the Middle East, whether it is for the to take control of the Gulf of the oil trade, or whether it is to prevent the expansion of fundamentalism, or whether it's for perceived self-security, if you take big countries and you put them into small, within small fractions of the society, you realize that you give them a importance that goes beyond maybe their regional or their local size.
Mr. Hajar, we all know that so many countries, as mentioned there, are using Lebanon as their proxy fighting ground. How can this issue then be resolved in the upcoming elections?
There are two schools. One says there will be an election, and another says that there will be no election. The latest speech by Nasrallah speaks of a precondition for the whole affair, which is to say consensual politics. If you agree on a consensual candidate, we can go through the elections without any difficulties. But I believe the great acolytes of the so-called 14th March group, they're opposed to anything that is called consensual politics in this case, and they prefer what they call their fictional majority, which is a deceptive majority. And if we are to go to speak seriously about what has happened in the past year or two, this government is a government of acolyte evangelicals, Anglo-Saxon types who had committed a great misdeed in this country by sectarianizing the Muslim community, the Sunni community, and this means that those people are itching for what may be called a sectarian conflagration in Lebanon. I think Hezbollah has averted this possibility, but these people are under the dictates of the evangelicals in America by President Bush and his company, and they intend to accept the diktat of America. If America says you go for consensual politics, they will go for it. If they say you go for anarchy, they'll go for it. They have no decision of their own.
Okay, and Mr. Fisk, if I could bring you in there, considering the tightening relationship between France and the US, will France be supporting this call?
Well, up to a point. You know, I'd like to go back to something George says there. The problem in Lebanon is that this is a sectarian society. And the whole business of elections, whether it be the political parties for the presidential election or it be national elections, all hinges around making sure that the number of members of parliament represent the power of the various communities, Druze, Sunni, Shia, Christian, Maronite, and so on. The problem with Lebanon is that it will never be free of foreign influence unless it's a modern state. And to be a modern state, you've got to deconfessionalize it, so that if you're an excellent Shiite cleric or an academic, you can become the president or you can become the prime minister. It isn't just a Maronite who becomes the president and a Sunni Muslim who becomes the prime minister and a Shiite who becomes the Speaker of Parliament, as it is at present. The problem is that if you do deconfessionalize Lebanon, it won't be Lebanon anymore, because the identity of Lebanon is sectarian, and that means inevitably that foreign powers can use the various groups against each other. I was speaking in Nabatea not long ago, I gave a lecture there, and somebody said to me, "What's the future of Lebanon?" I said, "You won't have a future if you keep asking British reporters. You've got to decide your own future." I said, if you spent more time trusting the next village and the next religious group, as you spend trusting Washington or Tehran or Tel Aviv or Damascus, you'd have a safe country.
Okay,
but
so
unfortunately,
what role
this is a
for
sectarian
foreign
society.
powers then?
I'm sorry?
What role for foreign powers then?
Totally to interfere in Lebanon, which they do. Why are weapons flooding into Lebanon at the moment? Why are the Americans pouring weapons into the Lebanese army at the moment? Because this is part of a battleground between regional powers and outside that between Iran and the United States. And it is ruthlessly used, and unfortunately the Lebanese allow themselves to be used. It is the great tragedy of this nation that it is very corrupted.
Mr. Ede, that must be a big concern for all, is the weapons flooding into the country, as Mr. Fisk is saying, and a dramatic increase in that.
Yes, well, this concern has not started from now. It has started a long time ago, especially after the departure of the Israelis from the south and the end of their occupation. What you see today is you have one armed group that you can call militia, if you take the exact definition of militia as being an organized armed body. That is Hezbollah, that has the possibility of by itself dominating the political situation, is the only force that is capable to imposing on through a coup d'etat or a military option. And this is something that it is very disruptive, because as you go along and you take a position that is not the position that Hezbollah would like to see, you you hear threats, you hear a type of wording that that is very disruptive when you know that the other party is well armed, is well trained, and has shown its ability to use the arms. More than that, we are forgetting one thing, that there is one side being assassinated and there is one side profiting of the assassination. If you go, you speak of the election, and you know that there is in all election a majority and a minority. One of the way to topple, to change this majority in transforming it into a minority without the need of election is by assassinating members of parliament. And this is something that is not being addressed enough, whether in the West or anything else.
Well, Mr. Hajjar, do you believe that there will be any progress? We know that Saad Hariri will be meeting with Ban Ki-moon on Tuesday to deal with the issue of the UN tribunal into the assassination of Rafiq al-Hariri.
Look, let me correct some things. Mr. Eddy refers to Hezbollah as a militia. Hezbollah is not a militia. Hezbollah is a national liberation movement that has liberated Lebanon when he and his family historically have been French agents in this country.
If they're not a militia, why don't they give up their arms?
I beg your pardon?
If they're not a militia, why don't they give up their arms?
This is a national liberation movement. I beg your pardon? This is a national liberation movement. We are dealing with a national liberation movement, and he and his colleagues are talking about as a militia. And the Lebanese government national statement and everybody considers them a national liberation movement. He is expressing his own paranoid provincialist education. he has to understand, he and his colleagues, and this fella, Iddi, is an ultra Anglo-French agent. He cannot speak as a Lebanese because he spent all of his life in that society. Now he came and inherited his uncle, and the other Jumblat inherited his father, and we are dealing with a group of inherited politicians who change sides depending on the wind. The wind of change, they think, is pro-American, so they went pro-American.
Okay, I'm going to have to interject there because we've got a break coming up, and maybe that's some sort of indication why it's so difficult to come to any compromise within Lebanon. But when we come back, we'll look at the options available to the Lebanese people selecting their next president. Stay with us.